from the films. We have Ashlynn Yennie from Human Centipede I and II, and Laurence Harvey from Centipede II. So if you'd like to come on up stage, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, thank you both for being here today. And so I guess we'll start off with Ashlynn. How did you first come on board on Human Centipede? What was your initial coming up? How did you initially be approached for the project?
I was living in New York at the time. This was like 5 years ago almost. And I got a call from my manager asking me to audition for a controversial European film. And I was like, yeah, controversy, let's do it. So I had no idea what the film was about, didn't know the name of it. I went into the audition and there was a lot of my girlfriends, you know, from New York, actresses there as well. And there was a sheet of paper outside the audition and it had a description of Dr. Hyder and what he was going to do to these 3 people. And all of my girlfriends got up and were like, this is ridiculous. And I think I'm just crazy enough and curious enough that I was like, I want to go talk to these people because this can't be real. And I go into the audition, because I didn't think it was real. I thought this is fake, this has to be fake, I mean. And I go in there and Tom's sister, Alona, this beautiful Dutch woman, she's like stunning, is sitting there behind this table. And I was so shocked because I was expecting like some creepy dude, you know? And I was like, oh my God, hi. And she's like, hi. And she shows me the pictures, you know, the drawings. And I was like, oh wow, okay, so you guys are really doing this, like really for real. And I probably picked her brain for, it was like over an hour where I sat there and just asked her question after question after question. And then finally she was like, well, do you want to audition? And I was like, yes, okay, sure. I auditioned and then that was like on a Tuesday. I went back in on Thursday. I met Ashley and a couple other girls. They paired us together and we had to get on all fours and see if we looked okay together. And then Friday, I signed the contract, and then I flew out Tuesday the next week, and I went to Amsterdam for like a month. So that was it. And Tom changed my life.
And so, Laurence, how did you come on board for Human Centipede II?
I got a call from my agent saying he'd been contacted by the producers of a film, and he turned it down because he thought it was a sex film. I thought, hold on, so what part did they want me to play? The lead part. I said, well, why would, adult entertainment company want me? What was the name of the project? So he said, Human Centipede II. And I'd heard of the first film, which at the time was still on the film festival circuit, and it had been at Fright Fest in London. I usually keep an eye out for what's playing at Fright Fest because they do pick some very good films. So I was already intrigued by the idea of the film, of the first film, and wanted to see the first film. And even though it would cost me money to go to the casting because I no longer lived in London, I got to see the film for free, so it was like a casting, but you get a free film, so it's probably worth going down to London for. So yeah, I went along and then saw the first film in the morning, then had like an hour to go across London and grab a sandwich, bite to eat, go to where the casting was, and yeah, like with Ashlynn, it was. I mean, usually you go to casting for something it's like 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour if it's a really, really good casting and it's going well. But, you know, I was in there for like 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and it's like, right. And then it became this whole thing where Tom would say, so start explaining the film in precise detail, and I'd be like, yeah, well, that's like guinea pig, or it's like the lone dove syndrome films, that kind of subgenre of Japanese horror, and that's like that, and you go, yeah. And we kind of got like a house on fire. Tom's enthusiasm really kind of gets to you, and you kind of feed off that and give back to him, I guess. So yes, I'm very thankful for Tom for giving me the chance to be lead in Human Centipede II.
So can you both talk a little bit about his directing style, about Tom's directing style on both films?
Yeah, I love the way Tom directs. For the first one, there wasn't a script per se. What it was a booklet, which I still have. Don't tell them. No, they know I have it. They made me give back my script for the second one. But it was a booklet of just paragraphs of every scene. And so, because for two-thirds of the movie we don't speak, so, and there was no dialogue. Tom didn't write like one stitch of dialogue for us. So what we had to do is, that's why at the beginning of the film, in part one, we're constantly saying each other's names because we didn't know what else to do. Do not give two actresses free rein when they don't know what they're doing. And so it was like, Jenny, Lindsay, like over and over again. And we were like, Tom, we're really sorry. This is butchering this right now. But, and so he just gave you a lot of freedom, and he did that with Aki and Dieter in part one. Gave them a lot of freedom. Aki actually wrote his end monologue in the end of the movie before he, sliced his own throat open. He wrote that monologue that because Tom obviously doesn't speak Japanese, and so Aki kind of said what he wanted to say and gave it to Tom, and Tom was like, I like this, I like the idea of this. So he's really amazing at how he kind of tricks you into thinking you came up with the idea when realistically he actually implanted it in your head. And you were like, I kind of want to do this, or make it like this, when realistically he's had this discussion with you before, and then as you're doing it, you're like, actually this is exactly what he wanted me to do. I'm not creative at all. So he's brilliant. He's a wonderful man to work with, and he probably has the best sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really serious on set with us at moments, but we had a lot of fun making these movies. Like, some people say when they make horror films, there's no laughter. Like, when you make a Human Centipede movie, you have to have a sense of humor, because, I mean, come on, when you're on all fours and someone's attached to your ass, if you're not laughing about it at some point, like, get the stick out of your own butt, It's like, funny.
But also on set, like, Tom's like this big kid kind of running around going,
oh, there was like one moment where I was like with him, and we were having like this really intense like moment together where I think right before you kill me in the second one, and Tom is like a foot away from me eating like this piece of chocolate cake. He's just staring. He's like, "Good, Ashlynn, good." And I was like, "Can you not do that right now?" Like, I was just so annoyed. I was like, "Tom, get your cake away from me." It was funny.
well, it was too tempting.
It was. I know, and he didn't care. He was like, "I'm gonna eat this one of you. See how you work." It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, you always knew you were doing something well when Tom would go behind the camera and lean down and go, that's so nasty.
That's so nasty. That's so nasty. And then he'd laugh about it. We're like, okay, I guess it's working.
But yeah, I mean, like you touched upon, I mean, Tom, it's obviously his first language is Dutch. So the script for the second one is all written in this kind of cod English.
It's very broken English.
But because you met Tom and he's talked you through each individual scene and so on, it all kind of makes sense. But you just go, I'm going to change that bit.
Yeah, because that's not how we speak.
So Ashlynn, can you, Human Centipede II obviously is completely different than Human. It doesn't follow the traditional route that most sequels do, in that it's actually the original movie is within the movie. And so what were some of the differences in how it was filmed and how compared to how we worked on the first one?
Well, the first one, it was weird because Tom approached me about doing the second one before the first one didn't even come out. So I didn't really know what was going to happen with the first one still. And I liked the idea of what he came up with. He pitched it to me and pitched, we had like an hour and a half long Skype session, and he told me everything that this guy was going to do and all the gross things in it. And there was like 3 major parts where I was like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, and I don't want to do that. Oh, this is so gross. But I really liked the concept of how he was going to shoot it. I had no idea it was going to be done in black and white.
Yeah.
It's a very gory set. The major difference between both the films is the first one, we didn't know what we were doing. We're getting into as far as the actors. We just were kind of trusting that it was going to be this film. We didn't know if anything was ever going to happen with it. And the second one, I told the girls that were on that set, I was like, we couldn't have paid enough girls to do this first movie. No one wanted to do it. And you guys voluntarily lined up for this. I was like, you guys wanted to do this so bad. And I was like, it was just the difference between both sets was amazing. But major difference between both films is the set itself. The first film was, we shot in this beautiful villa. We destroyed it, but it was this beautiful, clean, crisp white house, And then the second one was this extremely gross and disgusting warehouse. And
all the spaces in the set were working locations.
Yeah, they were all working locations. Yeah. So it was so funny because there was a park across the street of the second
from where we were shooting for warehouse interiors.
Yeah, where we were shooting the warehouse interiors, there was a park across the street, so we would have to go outside to use the restroom or something. And there's a park with children, and there's all these people with fake shit on their face. It's like, what are they doing inside of that location? That's crazy, screams coming and stuff. So that was the biggest difference, just locations. It was just the second one was so gross. It was disgusting. I can't wait for people to see. Hopefully one day you guys get to see parts of it in color because you can actually see how dirty it was. Because the black and white does not do justice.
So, for both of you, what was the most physically and most emotionally challenging parts of filming the movie?
With my part in part 2, it's just because Martin's in every single scene. So it was just not getting a chance to rest. You're just constantly on your feet. That was the most kind of physically strenuous part. But also, I have a disability with my back, but I talked with Tom about that and so on, so he kind of catered for that, so that wasn't too bad. But the most kind of emotionally intense scene, I guess, was the rape scene, which, I think I always prefer to sort of kind of get to know somebody and be playful with them before doing kind of an intense emotional scene like that. But I think Emma kind of wanted to keep a distance to have some of that kind of real shock and kind of fright, I guess. So there's these kind of the two of us working kind of slightly differently until the moment that we were actually shooting it in the fall. When we actually came to shoot it, we had a quick kind of 15 minutes talk about what I could and couldn't do, and where she was going to put her arm and leg and so on, and whether I could pull her leg or pull her hair or whatever. So all this had to be kind of worked out to find out because obviously it's an actress and you're working with them and you don't want to upset or offend anybody that you're working with. You want it to look powerful and great though. But Emma was fantastic. She's just going, go for it. But Emma would be the one that was always lying on the floor in the dark, whenever, on the dirty floor, whenever there was a break as well. So she was always the first one into position and so on.
I was the last one in position. I was like, I've already done that.
Yeah, but you were treated like a star, so therefore you were being ushered in.
Oh, I don't know about that, but the most physically demanding part for me was, for the first one, was the staircase scene. That was probably the worst thing we ever did. I don't recommend that to anyone. It doesn't matter what position you're in. Aki's wasn't so bad, but Ashley and I got like a migraine after that. It was just the weight of two people's ass asses on you. It's just like too much to bear. And Tom's having us crawl up the stairs. We did that in one take, by the way. We couldn't do it again. I was like, we're not doing this again. Like, we're doing it one time up the spiral staircase and that's it. But yeah, I think any part of the centipede itself is, I mean, we were all pretty young, so none of us had back problems or anything. So getting into the position was totally fine. And we only filmed for a few minutes
That's
at a
a
time.
dig at my age, isn't it?
That's great. No, I mean, you're young, you can have back problems too, but none of us had anything that was really, you know, physically daunting on set. And we only filmed for a few minutes at a time. The second one was harder because they had to duct tape us together, and so that took about 40 minutes to do. All 10 of us? Was it 10 of us?
10.
10. So we'd all get down, and they do. Emma was obviously, she was always laying there anyway.
She
so-
was there ready. Wait, come on.
And she didn't have to have as much duct tape as the rest of us. So she would go first, then Georgia, and then Daniel, and then every up the line. And so you'd just be waiting for your fake ass to be strapped on and then ready to go. And so you'd film as much as you could within those few minutes. But the second you stood up, that ass would fall off, and you'd have to sit down again and do it over again. And so it was like, yeah, it was great. It was fun.
Cool. I'm going to open up for a couple of the members of the audience. Anyone have any questions for? Yes, right here in the front.
Do you know where he's going with the next one? Does he have any ideas? Because there's going to be a third one, right?
Yeah.
There is a third one.
Yes, I know where he's going.
Lawrence? There's never any information you can share with
What? Let's do it online.
500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 500 persons.
Is it going to be Lawrence?
Yes.
Uh,
My what? Sorry?
Is it going to, are you going to be in the next one?
I'm in the next film, yes.
Wow.
Lawrence and Dieter are both in part
Yeah.
3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, what I can say is me and Dieter are the two main stars in it. Tom also appears as himself. There's 500 people in the Centipede. It's shot in the States, and yes, it will be shot in colour. Anything beyond that, I will be shouted at by Alona. He's very good at shouting at people. So yeah, so that's all I can say. All I can say is what's been published in the.
So it's already printed. Yeah.
So it's already made, is it in can? I mean,
No, we're shooting over the next few months.
Next, yes, right over there, sir.
This is kind of more abstract, try to ask this one, maybe as they go on to this again, but how do you guys address the issue with the subgenre that's kind of been created within the last about 10 years as far as hospital, this movie, there's more out there, I know there's been stuff in the past, but I think a lot more underground than what you're dealing with people like us here today, aficionados of people who really are so into it that they go out and self-discover these really under the radar films. But as far as now bringing it to more of a mass mainstream audience, how do you deal with the fact of that subgenre? Some people just completely just turn their head to it saying that's nothing but trash, it's dirty after watching it. I mean, it's just, it doesn't have any artistic credit whatsoever. Whereas there's always been this thing, why do we like horror? Why do we like that feeling that's created in ourselves to keep going back? We're going to be scared, but yet taking it to another level of more realism. And you talked earlier about, the process of making the film, how you had to have all that natural comic, I guess camaraderie, comedy going on, kind of to break down the tension of any, I guess, stress involved in making a film, but I think also more or less kind of like make light of what can some be described as just this horrific thing that actually really take place as opposed to something in, more
Of the fantastic
thing.
world, yeah.
How do you guys look at that as far as that, and as maybe even other cohorts in as far as fellow actors, actresses that will be in a film like this, how do you?
Well, everybody wants to be in it now. Like all my girlfriends who said no to it, they instantly were like, "Well, that's just really cool." I think for me, it was one of those things. I didn't know anything about the horror world before I did the movie. I was never a huge fan of horror films. I am the biggest scaredy cat you will meet. So I can't watch horror films because they stick with me for a really long time. hence probably why I do really well in them, is because I'm actually scared on set a lot of times. But so when I was introduced, when the Human Centipede finally started breaking out and people started hearing about it, and yeah, there's always going to be negative aspects to any film you do. Of course, this film, because of the content, was really it was exposed to like this really negative side as well as the extreme positive side. So I feel like the good outweighs the bad, because you're going to get people that love it or hate it. And we've said this before. And they're not even the same fans who love part 2, love part 1. Some people love part 2, don't like part 1.
And vice versa.
And vice
yeah,
versa.
so.
And so I think there's something to be said in both the films, and probably the third one, that people can find something to like in each of them if you want to. I mean, that's the thing. At the end of the day, we're just making movies. Like, it's just for fun. And that's the thing that I love about being exposed to the horror community, is just how, because you guys are the ones that are like the badasses who know everything about it. And so it's just, it's like we're making art, making fun of things that, yes, could happen in real life and could, not making fun of them, but just, exposing them and exposing the truth of what can really happen instead of something, this is man versus man. This isn't, some like ghost following you. So that's why it gets so scary and why some people don't want to watch it. But at the same time, there is a draw to watching horror films that why I don't watch them is because I get too scared, So I like it. I'm really proud to be part of the horror community now, and I'm really thankful. So. He laughs. I think it's awesome.
I guess what you were touching upon was the whole notion of torture porn. And I think that's a label. As far as I'm concerned, that's a label that came about around the same time as food porn and property porn. And for me, it's a derogatory term that is dismissive of a subgenre, which isn't necessarily about torture. So I think the term torture porn is a taxonomical misnomer for the first film. The first film is a fairly traditional mad scientist film. I think the second film is it's kind of more in keeping with that, but it still has that kind of Frankenstein and Frankenstein figure in relation to a creature. And I sort of see Martin as a kind of artist and sculptor, rather than as a kind of out-and-out cypher, I guess. But the plausibility of the films, I think Tom tried to take the kind of piss out of that with the second film, which is why it gets so over the top and so absurdly grotesque by the end of it. So so anyone that's worried that it might be able to happen or somebody might be able to copy it, that's kind of what the second film's about, how ridiculous that idea is.
Yeah, he's really just making fun of that idea that people had said when the first one came out. What if somebody actually did that because it was medically accurate? It's medically accurate, yeah, you could do it, but it's not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like, we had the surgeon on set, like, when we filmed the first one, and he was just making sure everything, like, the scars were in the right place and all those things. It's funny, my brother-in-law's a plastic surgeon, and he watched the first one, he was like, you can't do that. And then he's like, actually, you can do that surgery. You were absolutely correct. You can do the surgery, but you can't live. Even if we had IVs, like, we would die, like, I mean, but so when he made the second one, he just wanted to make this, like, grand, in your face, which it was very much,
Anyone else? A question? Cool, yeah. Well, right there. Yeah.
So will both of you keep making more horror movies? And also, after this one, did you feel like you changed ways that you went about your safety and things like that, since you're so scared of horror movies? Did it kind of change, like you just walking down the street by yourself or things like that?
I'm not scared of horror films.
It's funny, now that I've been in a few, and so I'm now not as afraid that I used to be, and now I can see probably what everyone else can see. It's like, oh, that's not real. I'm like, oh yeah, that effect didn't work that well, where I don't get as scared anymore. But no, now I am kind of this like fan of appreciate them so much more and the work that goes into them. As far as my safety as a human being, no, I'm fine. Everything's still okay.
I mean, I think that the exposure of the films brings you to the attention of different subcultures and kind of some personalities that you wouldn't necessarily want to meet. No, I'm not saying horror fans.
It's actually not the horror fans at all who are the ones that kind of get weird on you. There are some people who do, and it's really interesting. Like, they wouldn't be people that you expect necessarily.
Yeah, often it's kind of people that haven't seen the film and just are imagining something kind of far worse or something, or think that it's about something else. So
yeah, the biggest thing for me as an actress is now I had it's not so much anymore, but there was a couple years where I was getting offered scripts that were horror films, and people would just write the most crazy things, and they think, oh, you've been in the Human Centipede, without actually saying it. Well, you'll do anything, type attitude towards me, which was negative. And, I was like, I won't do anything. And you've never seen my movies, so you don't even know what they're about. You have this concept idea of, oh, it's people shitting in each other's mouths. Well, that's not what it's about, It's like, I get it, but it's like, come on. So, yeah, so for me, it was breaking out of that kind of mold of not just being typecast as a scream queen, but being typecast as, oh, this girl will do anything for a job, without actually seeing the movies and seeing the art that comes with them. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things that always kind of appealed to me about the first film, and what gave me the confidence in Tom as a director, was that kind of mix between high art and world cinema references, as well as kind of the lower kind of schlockier end of horror and kind of Asian kind of extreme cinema as well. It was this kind of mix of things that was appealing. It wasn't just another, it wasn't like a copy of a Hollywood horror film kind of thing, so it wasn't like trying to be a Friday the 13th part 15 or 16 or whatever. So, I mean, I'd be interested in doing any kind of the kind of cinema I'm interested in is something that has a lot of film, but not specifically in any particular genre. Although, I think I like films that have an effect upon the audience. I think horror as a genre tries to aim to have that effect. So therefore, I like horror. So a lot of the films I like are horror films. So what I've got on the horizon are not strictly speaking horror films, but like a grindhouse film or an action film with a kind of 80s Filipino kind of style to it and things like that. That's what I've been going for. Films that the horror audience I think will enjoy, but aren't me doing a psycho in every film kind of thing. So, yeah.
Another question for you, actually, Laurence. So, what was some of your preparations that you went into before going into the actual movie? So, how did you prepare yourself for the role?
Well, I'm very much like Martin in a lot of ways, except I guess my kind of social awkwardness and so on is more, I guess, directed to the good side rather than the dark side. And so yeah, so there is that big difference. But I guess I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert or something like that. I guess rather than so it wasn't that big there isn't that big a difference between Martin and myself in terms of kind of thought process or energy. It's just where it's kind of directed. And other than that, I kind of looked at horror films that had or films that dealt with somebody that was kind of socially awkward, that then ended up committing crimes that kind of fitted into the horror genre, like the British serial killer film Tony. I don't know if any of you know that. And a Japanese film called the DVD over here is called Late Bloomer, which is about a guy with muscular dystrophy in a wheelchair who ends up killing people. So I was kind of looking at these kind of outsider figures, and I'm a big fan of Robert Spossum in Deranged as well, so I guess those kind of things fed into it as well, because you've got to try and, even though there's no lines in the script, you've still got to work out a kind of narrative of how Martin's thought processes are going, you know, so you're kind of writing an interior monologue for yourself in each scene.
So how did you both get into acting respectively?
I think I've always wanted to be an actress. It's never changed. I did my first play when I was like 4, and I think my mom knew from then. She was like, "Oh no, my daughter's going to become an actress." And I grew up in Wyoming, so there was nothing to do there, and I had 2 older sisters, so we would just put on plays, and I was a dancer for a long time. And then I moved to New York when I was right out of high school, and I went to school there, and I studied film and television, and I lived there for 6 years, and then I'm now in LA. So it's always just been what I wanted to do. It's never changed. It's like when you have a dream when you're little and you get to do it. It's so exciting, you know?
It's the dream.
I feel like I feel so lucky because I'm from a really small town that I got to have the opportunity, and I have a really amazing family who, even after making the Human Centipede, they want to make films. My mom and Nana came with me to the premiere of the second one in Los Angeles. My Nana is 75 years old, guys. And she was rooting for the centipede. Broke away. She was like, "Go, go!" I was like, "You're amazing." So I was really lucky.
Did I tell you that in Chicago when when Miss Yennie's character puts the centipede up Martin's bum, there's a cry out from the crowd, "You got it, girl! You got it!"
I get so excited with that part. It's like, yeah, finally! And then it's like, oh, didn't really do that much damage. But,
well, it depends how you read the ending.
that is true. It just depends how you read the ending.
If you
So.
think Martin's dead, then obviously
Then
you won.
I won.
For myself, I was always kind of interested in performing, but not kind of necessarily. Well, I was always interested in performing, but then at high school, you see the kids doing drama, and it's like. So I kind of hated people like that.
Thanks, Lauren.
No, yeah, but you're not all jazz hands.
No, I'm not. I'm not that girl. I can't be that.
So I do hate that kind of jazz handsy kind of.
Let's all do jazz hands, but Lauren's up.
Horror. But I was always good at. I studied fine arts. I was always good at drawing and painting and so on. And then since I was like 4 or 5, people always expected me to be an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I went to art college, I changed because I was always interested in film. I studied at an art college that had a film part of the course, and but in the college where I studied, it was painting, printmaking, sculpture, and then 4th area, which was performance, film and video. And I went there as a painter in order to study film, but then on the 3rd week there was a performance course, and so I started doing that, and the performance that I did had an effect on the audience, and so I stuck with performance, or stuck in the 4th area, that's big performance, film and video area. And then as I started working with film, I realized I was absolutely inept at using a camera, so I just stuck with performance. So I was a performance artist who then when I came out of college, I was working with other performance artists, friends of mine who were working in TV, which is how I got into kids' TV, because they were doing all these mad characters for Saturday morning shows. And then from that I got an agent, and then started doing acting in theatre, and yeah, so I kind of went kind of reverse when I got into TV before doing theatre, so and before actually learning how to act. So yeah, and then yeah, that led to Human Centipede.
And what do you both have coming up in the future?
Human Centipede III next month. And I'm a big fan of I met the Dear God No guys on the convention circuit, and I really like the way they use a super 16mm film, and I like their whole kind of ethos. So, and James Bickert he's one of those directors that, like Tom, kind of knows kind of high art and low art, and James loves Bergman as much as he loves like the surreal porn film like Night Dreams or something. So I just like James, so I'm going to do Frankenstein Creative Bikers. Then I'm hoping to work with a guy that I met in Australia. He's shooting an action film in the Philippines later in the year, so that's going to be hopefully come off. But we're also talking about doing a true crime freak show film, about freak performers, with the same guy in Australia. So we're hoping to do a kind of true crime biopic.
I had a very busy year last year. I did 4 features. 3 of them will be out this year. The biggest one is called The Scribbler, and it's based off a graphic novel. The man that wrote it, name is Dan Schaefer. The graphic novel came out I think 11 years ago or something, and he adapted it into a screenplay, and it stars Katie Cassidy. She's on the show Arrow. She's also in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. And she plays the lead character Suki. It also stars Eliza Dushku, Michelle Trachtenberg, Gina Gershon, Garrett Dillahunt, Billy Campbell. It has a huge cast. It's pretty insane. And so that film, I actually saw a screening of it a couple weeks ago, and we shot parts of it in 3D, so it looks really cool. Like all the fight sequences between Michelle and Katie are pretty badass. But that'll be out later this year, and it will be in theaters. And then I shot a film, Adam Goresh and his wife Chase Anderson. They're a writing partner team, and Adam directed the film called Schism. They wrote it, and it stars Catherine Blue, who was on that Dead Like Me and Smallville, as well as Vinnie Jones. And so we shot that in New Orleans last year. And that's a story about redemption. It's a thriller. And that'll be out later this year. And then I just wrapped a feature called The Ghost and the Whale, and that stars this man, Maurice Bernard, who's been on One Life to Live for 20 years. And we just shot that in Bodega Bay, where they shot the birds. And funny enough, Tippi Hendren actually came and did a cameo in the movie for us. She's in her 80s, and so she sits on the porch and she does a couple lines, which is amazing. So I have all that stuff. Exciting.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to take one more question from the audience. Does anyone have another question before we wrap up here?
If you each had a role that you feel like you would be perfect for, which role would that be? Something that you've read, something that it would be a remake, or just to say, I would be spot on with this role?
I don't know. As an actor, you try not to limit yourself so much. But I did get the chance to do something that was kind of funny. I shot an independent film called The Divorce Party in October last year, and the writer and director of that movie, I feel like he wrote the movie about me, because it's about going through a divorce, and I was breaking up with my long-term boyfriend at the time, and I was like, these are my lines. I said these before in life. And so it was just a very small independent film, shot for like, you know, a little under $1 million, and so it was just like a nothing film. But that was like the role where I was like so close to home that I was like, this is my role. I'm made for this one, you know, because it was just really lighthearted.
Centipede didn't cost it, did it?
No, Centipede, he's huge, so I'm still best friends with him. But you never know, might work out still. Yeah, so, but I don't know, I mean, there's so many roles where you want to play as an actor that you hope you get the chance to, if it's a remake or not, or just something that you find you click with the director, the writer, you know, like working on the Human Centipede, you know, honestly, I think all of us just really clicked with Tom, and we get his humor and his sense of direction and where he wants to go, and so if you find those people in life, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think as an actor, it's more about the actual quality of the role and the people that you're working with and their ideas and so on, rather than a specific character type. I don't work that consciously, I guess. So it's more, I'm interested in working with people with a kind of interesting vision. So I would love to work with Guy Maddin. You know, a lot of the reviews of Human Centipede II mention, you know, say Laurence R, Harvey is the new Peter Lorre kind of thing. You know, it'd be great to do a kind of Peter Lorre kind of role with Guy Maddin. You know, as he has his kind of like 1930s black and white kind of vibe to his films kind of thing. So that would be my kind of dream job. But and I also love the book, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and if ever that was adapted into a film, even a walk-on part, I would just love to be part of that.
And then sometimes you just take roles because you need to work.
Yeah, there's always the rent to pay.
There's always the rent to pay.
Oh, actually, that's why I'm on welfare so much.
I think Sean Connery said that best in a quote. He was like, you know, sometimes you do films you really want to do, and then sometimes you just gotta eat.
Well, I want to thank you both very much, Ashlynn and Laurence, and for coming out here this weekend and sharing your stories about your experiences on the film. And thank you again.
Thank you.